Hello, hello. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening. Nice. I'm glad to see you all nice and warm in your homes. Um, we will be starting shortly, and this evening we would be
Okay.
looking at the art of Caribbean folk storytelling. What does that mean? Why is Caribbean folk storytelling different? What makes it different than regular storytelling? What are some of the nuances and subtleties and punchlines or phrases that you only understand years later when you get much older, as I have, and so on. So we would like to, without further ado, welcome your host for this evening, the lovely, talented Miss Cynthia Davidson, and I'll let her take it away.
Okay,
Where?
so now before we get started, let's do the Zoom protocols. Everybody, when you get in, mute yourself so we don't have any echoing down the line. Okay, and if you need to say something, you just raise your hand. So again, this welcome to Westcan Folk Performing Company. This is the storytelling part of our community. What's this one? Huh? Community belonging. Oh boy, yeah, we trying to keep track of all that West Can's doing. Very, very busy set of young people. So this is a West Can has been in existence, as you know, for about 40 plus years. And this is part of this community belonging project. It's been sponsored in part by the Secrétariat aux relations avec les Québécois d'expression anglaise, and it's part of also Canadian heritage, and it's bridging language culture in Montreal and Quebec. Uh, the couple of things we want to talk about before we get into our project. We mentioned our sponsors. We would like you to know that at the end of this series, everyone will be getting a notebook because, as we always say, everyone has their own story to tell, and you will get your own notebook to write down your story. So, we were saying, why do we tell stories? There are many reasons, as there are many stories. Some of them are for education. Another reason we tell stories is that education, in the sense that not what we learn in school, but what we learn from life. We learn life stories. We learn morals. We learn how our communities view life. Everybody has a worldview. Every community has a worldview, and the stories we tell express that worldview. So in the Caribbean, we have different peoples came from different parts of the world. Some dragged there in chains. They had one worldview. The original people that lived there had their own worldview. Unfortunately, we don't know what their worldview was because there aren't too many of them that were left by the time our ancestors got there. We had the European worldview. We had different, not only a blanket European worldview, but different Europeans had their different worldviews. And all that went to the part of the world where we are from and meshed together to form what we call Caribbean culture. I forgot two important peoples. People from the continent of India and people from the country of China, who also contributed to the Caribbean worldview. So when we talk about Caribbean culture, we talk of all these different people coming together. Some of them, their influences, depending on which island they went to, their influences were stronger. Some of them meshed with what they found there and created something that was completely new, something that doesn't exist in any other part of the world. That is Caribbean culture. So before we get started on our story, I would like to acknowledge the peoples that were in the land that we currently live in, their ancestors and their ancestral spirits, as well as our ancestors from all over the world. We are all here today, and we are all here to share and take what we learn out into the world and live. Okay? All right. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce my other animator, other storyteller, Miss Pat Dillon. Pat, do you have anything to contribute to why we tell stories? I see you have your your talking stick.
Talking stick.
Yeah.
I find it hilarious. Oh, okay. All right. I could take this off. Okay. I'm having a Janet Jackson moment. All right. Stick it right down in the pants bag. Thank you very much. Hey, Montreal and the World Wide Web. I have the talking stick. I would pass it to you, but you know it's COVID time. You know what? I'm not on? I'm on now. Take the whole thing and shove it in the pants back. Yes, it's me. I'm still real. Never mind that we're going through stuff. But you gots to be me. Yeah, right? I gots to be me. It's nice to see people in the flesh. Auntie Sylvia, I couldn't tell. Hear me, Cynthia, I couldn't tell when last I see you.
Long
Shanty,
time.
shanty, a lay girl, I ain't see ya. Give me a
That's
wine.
a long time,
Give
me never
give
see
me
you.
a wine.
Come
You see,
back
all of
to
that
rock
is
and-
storytelling too, you know, those songs. And particularly that one by Nadia Batson. That is, if you listen to the lyrics, I know it's hard because the beat is so infectious. But that is how we say hello.
Yep.
And that is part of who we are, and it's important because, and I'm learning more and more and more, because believe it or not, I shut my mouth-ish for the last 5 years. I don't know where I look in. I look in there?
In the
Okay.
camera.
All right. I shut my mouth for the last 5 years. A lot of what I wanted to say, I couldn't say. And as a result, I became ill, very ill, and no longer myself. I wasn't Pat. I just wasn't Pat. I was people pleasing, and I wasn't being me. And it took about 2 years, and my girlfriend, a good, smart Caribbean child, said to me, "You need to do your work." And the voice of the Caribbean, I think she said West Indian, because I'm paraphrasing, is unheard of. Very little of her is heard in this part of the world. Look, camera. Nice. And since I heard
I look in
that
camera already.
a little bit more, I've been speaking a little bit more. I haven't been repressing myself. I haven't been, you know, what's the point? Then we watched poor George Floyd. Poor George Floyd. 7 minutes, 46 seconds. His narrative on that sidewalk. And he called for his kids, and he called for his mother, and his life ebbed away in front of us at a time when we became very introspective. I don't know if people realize really what happened. That the whole COVID thing, and we didn't know if we were going to die. And so we started being friendlier. The world started healing itself. And his story came out. Breonna Taylor story came out. Ahmed, and I can't remember his name, story came out. The young man here in Montreal who was killed not too long, their stories came out, and so on and so on. And I think what I have to add is I recently lost my mom. It's 9 days. 9 days ago. And as I went through that process with my sister, all of my sisters her story and our lives came flashing in her head. It's still in my head because when somebody passed and you hear somebody pass, the memories come back to you in video.
Yeah.
And then I went and take up myself and gone in the lady house and looking at all of her pictures. Right? I even had one chin at one time. I did forget about that part of my story. And then the stories come out. And I know last February and early March, we said to some women here in Montreal, don't wait until you die for your children to sit down in the funeral to hear your stories. Get a copybook. Get some foolscap. Children, for those of you who don't know what is foolscap, go and ask mommy and daddy what is foolscap. What is a copybook? If you're Canadian born like me, go and get the Hilroy notebook and start writing your narratives. All the incidents, because we heard a lot of them in that workshop. And particularly as black women living in a Quebec context where they don't always want to hear the truth from us.
Yep.
So we watch them and we watch them lick up into the wall and we don't even say, I told you so. But that too many times has been too many of the older black woman stories and women my age, 55. I think for young people, I don't know. I have to take a pulse of that nation. And that narrative, when you hit that ceiling and you can't talk because you're not allowed to talk, how are you going to get it out? So that's what we're going to study today. Story time?
Story time. You want to start first? Or you want me to tell mine first?
Well, I just talk a bag of talk, so you go first.
Okay. All right. My story has to do when I heard a story when I was in Trinidad. I was a little girl. And it was a nice sounding story. But now that I'm older, it still is a good sounding story. But the lesson that I've learned from this story has stayed with me from then till now. And it's because even though this story originated in another land far, far, far away, it still would be, but you could tell that story today. And people would still be able to listen to it and say, you know what? I have to think about this. And to me, the most important stories that live with you are the ones that make you think. The ones that you don't just hear one time and you laugh, kiki. Those are good too. But the ones where you sit down and you go, you know, there is a lot of truth in that. Because the way I look at life, and I guess a lot of people, is that truth is not, what's the word I want to say? There's a saying that there are 6 sides to every story.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so with this story, there's 6 sides because it talks about 6 blind men. Now, I want you to pay attention to the fact that the men are blind. So the story goes like this. There were 6 blind men living in a village. This is in India, long time ago. And because it was a nice village where long ago people used to look after the sick and the infirm, the people in this village used to look after these six men, you know. They'd treat them, old uncle, how are you? You're good, okay, everybody well. And travelers would come through the village and they would hear stories, and the blind men would listen like everybody else to the stories, and they would get an idea of what the world was like from listening to the stories. And, you know, they would say, oh, the world out there that we can't see, but it sounds like an amazing place. But the one thing that these 6 men found really fascinating was when people used to talk about elephants. They would say to them, the elephant is a big animal. You could rip up a forest with an elephant. The elephant have a trunk. You could put logs in it. And then somebody else would say, yes. And the Raja, which is the king, his daughter goes about the kingdom on an elephant. And they would say, wow, what kind of animal is this? Ripping up forests, and you could put little, I'm sure the Raja wouldn't put his daughter on a dangerous animal, but if he could rip up a forest, must be really dangerous. And then the 6 men used to argue, how it could be this, how it could be that, how it could be dangerous and kind, and argument would go on and on. Mind you, they're blind, right? So they can't see. They only going, the argument only going on and on. Like how, like how people sit down and argue. Think in the West Indies when the men sit down drinking rum and they're talking, same kind of thing. So finally somebody said, you know what? Since all you're always arguing about elephants, somebody going to take you guy to go see an elephant. So they say, well, how are we going to go see an elephant? Be blind? How are we going to go? So somebody say, okay, we're going to call the youngest boy in the village. 6 of you get in a line. One of you put your hand on the shoulder of your friend. And the last one, he put his hand on the shoulder of the little boy. And all you will journey to where you could find an elephant. So that is how the 6 men started off on their journey to go see an elephant. And all the way, you could imagine the discussing and the arguing. Elephant big, elephant dangerous, blah, 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 blah. Plenty talk going on about this elephant. So finally they get to the where the Raja was living. Or the Raja, he was lying down because let's say he just finished eating. All right, and he taken his afternoon nap. So they lead the 6 men into the courtyard, and there was an elephant. So the young fella said, all right, only go check out the elephant. Now, because it's 6 of them, they can't all stand up in a line to see the elephant, right? So you say, okay, only go around the elephant, and everybody, you can't see, you reach out. So they reach out and they're feeling the elephant, So one man touched the elephant, and he touched his side. He go, this elephant, he like a wall, man. He's a wall, the elephant like a wall. Another man, he touched the trunk and curling up, and he go, this like a snake, elephant like a snake. Another man, he touched the ears, and elephants have big floppy ears, and he go, big floppy ears. The elephant like a fan, man. The elephant like a fan. And then another one touched the trunk and the tusk, and he go, nah, man, this thing sharp. Elephant like a spear. Elephant is a spear. Now, there was one man who, after hearing all these stories, he come to the conclusion, everybody lie, have no such thing as an elephant, or people making up story, because they could not, nothing that could do all these things, right? So this man, he went and he touched the tail of the elephant, and he said, damn thing like a rope, man, elephant like a rope. And they start arguing again. So finally, all of them go, and the guy say, all they touch the elephant, all they feel the elephant, all they know the elephant. Yeah, man, we know what the elephant is. So they sit down on that tree. They start arguing. The elephant is a wall, I tell you. The elephant like a wall. The elephant, no. It's like a spear, man. Nah, man, the elephant, it's a tusk, man. Big argument start up again about the elephant. So finally, with all the noise they're making, the Raja wake up from his nap. He go, fellas! Well, they're making plenty noise. What's the problem? So they start arguing again. We come here to touch the elephant, and the elephant, one guy go, it's a wall. The other one go, no, it's a rope. The Raja say, okay, all you calm down. 6 of all you touch the elephant. Elephant is a big animal. If you put your head together and you figure all 6 of all you arrive at the truth of what an elephant is like. Now all you go home and let me go back to sleep. So the 6 men sit down and they sit down. You know what? The Raja is a smart man. He have a point. 6 of we was there. 6 of we touch a different part of the elephant. The elephant is all them things put together. Why we didn't think of that before? So he said, okay, let me figure that out. Let me go back home. So they return home the same way they came. Little boy in front leading them. The 6 of them with their hand on the shoulder of their friend. This time when they went home, no argument. Everybody talking about the fact that they touch a different part of the elephant. And could be the truth of what an elephant is like. That's my story. The wire bed.
So when It have gossip out there. Depends on whose perspective. That if I put it together and pick sense out of nonsense, I will have the true story.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Yeah. Auntie Cynthia. Well, now I have a story. I'm not sure if I like this camera. This camera make me look fat. Camera supposed to make me look slim. I don't know if I like this camera. Next time you have to put this skinny people lens on the camera. That is my narrative. You have to laugh or else you will cry.
Yep.
I'm crying all the time. Can't work. When I was growing up, I grew up as part of the Cotoneche black community. I tell you, woohoo! And we learned all about Anansi. And Anansi is a spider. This past year, we were able to reimagine Anansi again and introduce him with the story I'm about to tell to a whole new audience because they had never heard about Anansi. Thank you. I've fallen apart. And then we asked everybody to draw Anansi. Draw him as, after they heard the story, and we had some adults draw Anansi. Now, there are tons of stories about Anansi. Anansi is all things. He is from a West African village, and he is a trickster. Now, what is a trickster? For our North American audience, what do you call a trickster? What is the proper word for trickster?
Good Jamaican word.
Jinal. He's a damn jinal. You guys in Trinidad and Tobago say scam. Smart man or a scamp. But I'm trying to think of a North American. He's a con artist. He's a grifter. But he has a very good heart. And he is the keeper of all stories. And he's a lazy little fellow. He does do for himself, but he's beloved. He really is loved. You can't help but to love him. But people are kind of wary of him. We all have one of those Anansi-like people in our lives. So this story I'm going to tell is how Anansi got to town. Anansi was sleeping one day, and he get up and he say, "Oh, I gotta go and get some grocery." But he was so lazy, a lazy little fellow, don't like to walk at all. How am I going to get to town without getting hot out there? Because by the time I get there, the sun will be up in the air, I'll be hot and I'll be sticky, and I have to walk so far. Now you have to remember, this is the time, long, long, long ago, when time animals could talk, because there was a time when animals could talk. So he always working his brain, so he say, you know what? Let me go over by Brother Lion. Let me see if I could get Brother Lion to carry me over to the market and back. This is still 2 feet. We still have enough feet. I had to get up because you have to tilt the kilt up. You're cutting off my head. It's like them 1970s photos in my mother album. I think you have to tilt it back a bit. Just a bit. Yes, okay. Hey, I'm looking a little slimish there. So Anansi went over to Brother Lion. Hey, Brother Lion, how you doing? A nice Sunday morning. What you eating today? Oh, said Brother Lion, I have some food in there. I will eat a little later. So Anansi said, Brother Lion, what if I could tell you, I could get you better meat than what you have back there? I could get you chicken. I could get you lamb. I could get you goat. I could get you anything your heart's desire. All you have to do is carry me to town. Look here, Anansi, not me and you today. Anansi, I have my good food in at the back. And if you think I going with you and any one of your games, me no in it today. Oh, come on, Brother Lion. It's the best meat in the world. So I'm going to get it for you. All you have to do is let me jump on your back and you carry me to town. So Lion look at Anansi and say, Anansi, understand me good. Fly high, fly low. Anyhow me carry you to town and I don't come back with all of the meat where you promised me. It's me and you, hell and powder house going broke down. Nah, man, Lion, man. Trust me. That's CHUSS. Trust me. So Anansi the Spider-Man hop on the lion back and he sit down. No, I'll know. Anansi don't know how we get in the meat for lion, but it's a long way to town. Anansi is a trickster. He's a genial. Him is a smart man. He's a grifter. He's a con man. He going to figure it out. So he going to town, and as he's going to town, he waving because he's a popular fella. So he waving to everybody. So everybody say, how come Anansi up on the lion back? What is going on? This gots to be good. So as they got closer and closer to town, everybody following behind. You know why? You know why? Why?
It's a carnival, it's a parade. They never see spider on top of lion.
They fast. Nosy. You know, like when you see a car accident or something or a fight, how everybody goes to watch to see what happened. Well, everybody see Anansi sit on the lion back. And before you had it, a lot of people, all the animals in the jungle following. So now as he get closer to town, he mind going and he kind of figuring out a plan. He had the plan now. So he says, okay, at the edge of town, Lion, you wait right here. I am going to go and hook up the meat for you. So Anansi run to the market and he saw Brother Tiger. So he said, Tiger, how you doing there? And he say, what if I told you that I could get all of your meat sell today Sunday, right? All you have to do for everything you sell, you give me 2 pounds of meat. 2 pounds of meat. 2 pounds of meat, right? Now, Brother Tiger wasn't having it. Things have been slow. Maybe it was COVID time. I don't know. But he's wary of Anansi because everybody, Anansi, me and you know, me no in it with you, you know. How are you going to get all my meat sold? So see here, look outside the market. When you look, you'll see a lot of people, right? So Anansi carry Brother Tiger, and they look out, and then hear Anansi, way, look at people. If you hold a sale, do not mark up the price, dear. Put it down little bit and hold a mega sale. And for everybody who buys, you give me 2 pounds of meat. Right? He said, okay, that could work. So Anansi came out and he looked at all the people. I talked to Brother Tiger today, and today it's a big sale on meat. Lamb, chicken, everything, goat, anything your heart desire. Cow foot, all of the best prime meat. Any meat you want. It's on sale because of me, Anansi, because I take care of my people. Well, people, because you know, people like sale, you know. You just have to say cheap thing. Good thing for cheap. Eh? So everybody, one excitement in the market. And Brother Tiger start to sell. He sell this way. He sell this way. And every meat he sell, he put on £2 for Anansi. Well, listen. Anansi wasn't even waiting for the sale to done. He take up his £2 a lamb. He take up his £2 a goat. He can get all oxtail too, and you know oxtail dear now, you see. He take up his goat. He take the cow foot. He get meat. He get meat. And he throw it on his back. And he walk out. Back to the edge of town. To Lion. Here, Lion. Anansi. I was no, just going come for you, because I feel it's a little general move you make for me there, And he said, nah, man, look at meat. You ever see so much meat in your life? Look, it have everything. Now you have to carry me back home. And when I go back home, I will give you your meat. So Anansi get back up on the lion back. He throw the meat over him back and he ride all the way back home, way back home. And that is how Anansi got to town to buy the meat without doing anything. He didn't even have to pay bump no farthing. That is not a money spent. And that is Anansi. Aye, aye, aye. Oh, I tell you. Woo. I tell you. And Nancy, out there, but we know people like that in our lives. I ain't saying nothing. Some of them related to some people inside this room right now. I'm not calling names. So where do we go from here?
Well, we're still talking about how we learn from our folk tales, like Anansi. We know Anansi's a scamp. Anansi's a smart man, as we say. But the one thing is, even when you're talking about smart men, people know Anansi's a trickster, and they still fall for his tricks.
But he's a good fellow.
He's
loving.
He's loving.
Right?
So there be no people like that, right? People who we know. They're coming up to you, and you're seeing the trick a mile away. And they're coming up with the trick, and you say, all right. I know you're tricking me, but... And you go for it.
So now, how can we encourage you to tell your stories? Because here now, well, when I was a kid, I grew up on Cinderella, and Nancy as well.
Yeah.
Cinderella, and I grew up hearing my sisters and my mother talking about back home. So that by the time I reach back home, I don't already know. Oops, okay. But I thought I so loud they bound to hear me.
Right across the airwaves.
By the time I got home to Jamaica, and I do call Jamaica home even though I'm born here, I knew everybody. I could smell, I could see, I could taste. I knew all of the characters based on from a little child. And most often it was that blue envelope with the red and navy blue stripes
Yeah.
And they'd open it and it would be passed around, and eventually we would read it too, because we were called, my brother and I, the last two who were born here, were called Auntie Millie Canada Pickney. Translation, Auntie Millie's Canadian children. So we would hear the stories. But is that important now, today?
I would say yes. I was told recently, I borrowed a book from the library when the library was open, right? It's a book written by a Martinican girl, a graphic novel, in which she talks about how Martinicans went to France. Martinicans and Guadeloupans, they went to France in the 60s, the same way that English Canadians women came to Canada in the 60s. And Isa said to me, this girl wrote a book, so now I know how people from Martinique, Guadeloupe, Réunion, why they ended up in France. You guys don't talk about why you all came here. So we have no, she says, we have no idea what made you guys, what made people get up, leave the West Indies and come to Canada. I said, you know, that's true, because I had teachers when I was at my high school who were teachers, but they came to Canada as domestics. Why? Because that was the only way they could get to leave Trinidad to come to Canada at the time. They came here on the domestics. A lot of people, a lot of nurses left to go to England under the same plan. England needed nurses after the war, and they got West Indian women to do it. People went as teachers to the United States because they needed teachers. And that's why so many women left the English-speaking Caribbean to go to the UK, Canada, and the States. But you guys don't know why. You just know we are here. You don't know why.
If you look in what is now the encyclopedia, it's about a paragraph this big.
Okay.
But we need the stories, for instance, as, the moment people dead, the phone ring. So 2-3 days after my mother's passing, all sorts of people called. And I spoke to an auntie because, as you're a big somebody, we call you auntie. You didn't have to be a blood relation
Right, yeah.
for you to be called auntie or uncle. And that was the first time I heard that the domestics who came here, every Thursday was the day off. That's the day, because most women lived in the houses where they worked. And on a Thursday, they would go to the Y. And I'm assuming it's the Y downtown, the women's Y.
The women's Y, yeah.
And that is how we heard that women who came like a year before the new arrivals, or 2 years before, or 5, 10 years, would come every Thursday to teach and pass along the learnings that they learned from paving the way onto new people. And that became, if you will, a place of fellowship and community. And that is how a lot of people learned the ropes. I never knew that.
Yeah.
I just found that out. So now that tells me I might want to go to the Y or go to an archive and look for what we doing. Oh, okay. the technology. Look for, are there pictures
Of this,
these
yeah.
happenings
Yeah.
at the Y? I understand that the last plane of Caribbean domestics, that there was an article in the Gazette. I want to see that. I don't know how I can get those stories, but all of those stories. But what about the stories of now, particularly how we're making it through COVID? The last big thing was the ice storm.
Storm, yeah.
And I got a heck of a lot of learning out of the ice storm. I now know how to make tea, coffee, and macaroni in a can on 2 candles, and I could boil a meal on a can of Coke, an empty can of Coke, and don't feel I didn't do it, right? Tea, coffee, I could boil some noodles, and then you throw the tomato sauce, and you have yourself a hot tea. That was from the ice storm. But what are we learning
Yeah.
from COVID? And so, this is where we come to the point where we encourage you to write.
Right, that's right. Yep. That's why we be sending out those journals, and everybody is encouraged to write.
When we did the first workshop, there was a woman who told us about the first time, and she worked, I believe it was in a home. No, it was on the bus. And she was sexually assaulted. And it's just, and funny enough, it was March 12th, the night before the whole world shut down on March 13th.
13th, yeah.
CDC closed down everything afternoon, but I don't leave the house. I didn't look on the phone. And we went off to this place to hear stories and share stories. And we just got talking. And we were supposed to go there for 2 hours. I think we spent 4. And it was the first time this woman talked about it publicly out there to people and shared. Some stories are personal, and not everybody wants to share their deepest, dark secrets. But here we go. So, these are the notebooks.
These are your notebooks.
Purple. No, don't hand me no blue one.
Purple,
On
I
now.
forget.
You forget?
I forget. How could I forget? Purple.
Wow.
All right. So you see, everybody, that's what your notebook looks like. You know, it's strange that you talk about, we talking about writing stories. My sister has a friend who's a prof in University of Arizona, I believe. And on one of her projects, she was working with refugees in a refugee camp in Kenya. And these were women who had come from Uganda as refugees. And she was using, again, we're talking about using the arts to bring stuff out. And so they had this drama workshop in this refugee camp. And they got people to act out their experiences about about the war, how they ended up as refugees. And she said one of the most touching things that she remembers was this woman acting out how the Ugandan soldiers had taken her baby and thrown it into a mortar and pounded it to death. It was the first time she was able to, she couldn't talk about it, but she could act it out. And to me, it's important, like you were saying, you couldn't talk for,
I'm still learning
and
to
you're
feel
still
like
learning
me.
to talk like you.
And the thing is
I do mine with dance.
Hey, look, I can't fathom it, right?
Yeah.
And now, I don't feel like me now because I am the bereaved.
Yeah. And you've had 2 in the shorts in.
It just keeps going and going and going.
Yeah.
But the writing helps. We have one more story to tell,
Okay.
and I'm going to read it. How are we for time? 2 minutes. I'm going to read it fast.
Okay. They're going to show the flyer for the Belonging Project. Storytelling. Is she going to be on next Thursday? Okay. Do you want me to mention her name?
From Trinidad?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. You're going to do the story. You do your story.
I'm going to try to read it fast. And the reason why I'm reading it is because it's recent, and now the event of my life has triggered a story. So I want to show you that the written word, it doesn't have to be published by a big publisher. You too could write your stories. They have value. February 2020, it came to my mind that stories are important, as how do we record the narratives of our lives without them? We are very much an oral storytelling people, yet we get vexed when we see other people writing their histories. Since we help to build this part of the world, how will people know it unless we write it or record it? Some of our stories. A very wise Caribbean child pointed out to me that the stories of the West Indian woman has not populated the Canadian landscape. So with the passing of my mother, I offer this piece. True story. Millie wins $1 million plus. It was a summer day. Oh, I would say it was about 1982 or so. I knew this as my brother was still living home. We lived in an old house where the traffic sounds like a river rushing by during the summer, and on a cold day you can not hear a thing. Mom was up and about, puttering about. She always puttered. My brother was reading the paper at the kitchen table. Mom handed me a ticket and asked me to ask my brother to check if she won the 649. Now, 649 was gaining real traction because you could now win $1 million. I handed my brother the ticket and went off my way. It wasn't even 3 minutes after handing him the ticket that he called me back into the kitchen and said, "You check it." Now, my brother was a crafty bugger, even toned and voice, so I didn't think anything was amiss. I sat down and proceeded to check the ticket. The first number in the paper matched the number on the ticket. So did the second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. My head reeled. Howie, that's what we call him, even though that's not his real name, but he answers to it anyway. Oh my God, we won! Now, around this time, my mom, as part of her menopause, started having angina attacks, so we had to tell her quietly. Howie needed to leave shortly for work, but he said he would go and call in sick. I would wait upstairs, and then we would quietly tell Mom. We approached her room, and Mom was puttering. My mother puttered. Never kept still. Always something. Dusting something, washing something, cooking something. Mom, sit down and don't get excited. Well, Mom looked at us with a look of incredulity. I remember today, she started to mumble to herself. She started to spin. Call, Faye. You sure? Let me see the ticket. We gave her the ticket and the newspaper to corroborate our story. Call Faye to come home. Don't tell her what it's about. Mind they listening on the phone. She muttered, no. I have to go to my bed. Where is Peter? What time is he coming home? Don't tell nobody. We might get robbed. Mom's mind was going a mile a minute. Don't tell anyone, I thought to myself. I wanted to shout it from the rooftop. We won the 649. But my mother is a very private person. She didn't let much outside of the family. She didn't let anything out. It was just how she was. Pretty soon the three of us had the house above. 30 minutes or so, my sisters came in and sat down on the bed. Mom was feeble in the bed with the excitement. What is it, Auntie? Because everybody calls her Auntie. We win money. My brother handed her the newspaper and the ticket. Well, at this point, the roof came off. The quiet. We started spending the money. Mom was insistent that we don't talk on the phone. We planned the trip. Who fire them work, fire them job. And how an hour passed, and by then the baby of the family came home. He came upset and said, "What's going on?" Because Mom being in bed while the sun was up was unheard of. You sick, Mom? No, we win money. We handed Peter the ticket, and Peter looked at the ticket, and he looked at it. This is not a ticket. This is the results. I went to the corner store and got the results. We didn't win no money. Long story short, my brother called back his job and said he wasn't sick no more. He went back to work. None of the things that we bought that day got bought. And that is how Millie won $1 million and some.
Okay. So, our next meeting, we meet next Thursday. Should I stand up? I guess I should stand up. I've been sitting for so long. So, next Thursday in a Community Belonging Project, we have, in our storytelling workshop, we have a special guest, Aintu Pearl Springer, storyteller from Trinidad and Tobago. And she'll be joining us, obviously, via Zoom. Yep. So I should say, yes, she's an award-winning actress. Dr. Springer is one of the most prolific female playwrights of Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean. Her plays have been performed internationally to critical acclaim. They focus primarily on the heritage and culture of her birthplace, Trinidad and Tobago. They contain authentic historical information and facts, ensuring that her plays are not only educational, but they reveal aspects of the indigenous culture of Trinidad and Tobago which may still be unexplained. Okay. So we can hear finally about the indigenous people of the Caribbean. That's good. Because we don't know much about our indigenous brothers and sisters, cousins, great-grandmothers, great-great-grandmothers in some of our cases. Yes. So thank you, everyone. We hope you enjoy our storytelling today.
So, tell
Auntie.
a friend. What is it? Westcan Folk, WESTCANFOLK@gmail.com if you too want to know how you can feel like you belong. Because we build this place, you know. We build this place, you know. From the stripes of we back.
That's
we
right.
forged and advocated.
That's
but
right.
it's not written anywhere. So let's start to write it.
Yep.
All right?
All
we
right.
belong.
We
Join us.
belong.
That was fun.
I'm doing like Trump. Well, that was fun.